team, we had Jaron Boots Ennis go to Atlantic City to unify the welterweight titles over the weekend. Dominates Stanionis. Stanionis touched him up with some shots along the way, but Boots won every round, and he grabs the ring belt, the WBA belt, the IBF belt to his collection. What were your takeaways, man? What did you like? Are there things you didn't like or could get better? What'd you take away from it? What'd you grade the performance?
First thing I like is what my comment section is going to look like next week. Because I must say, Sean, our hiatus has been poorly received. I have been getting trolled in my own DMs and my own comment section about why are you not talking to Sean Zittel anymore? What the fuck? Where is the fucking mashups at? I'm not kidding you. Like I try to tag you in some of this shit when I hear it. Nobody else evokes that kind of response. People want to see this, and so I'm glad to be back and that we're doing it. So I can satisfy the demand.
Well, if I may, the last video we did about 40,000 views. It was like a 30-minute reaction to Gervonta Davis and Lamont Roach. So the way I decided we'd capitalize on that momentum is not doing a video for 5 weeks. So I think you're gonna see this strategy work so well.
No, I gotta press you now. I'm getting too much heat. You know what I mean? This is what it's like. It's like the revolution working with Prince. I gotta make you do albums. So we're about to keep this going. Everybody can rest assured.
Yes.
We'll be seeing this consistently week to week. And I'm so happy to be able to satisfy the fans and enjoy it myself. This is my favorite thing to do. So to answer your question, there has to be a conversation about the conversation going into the fight, right? The fight itself was an extraordinary display of Boots and his talent, his focus, his ability to execute, his ability to block out the noise and prove what he says about himself to be true, and also make those people who seem to be a bit hyperbolic and overestimating his ability correct in their initial assessment of what he is capable of doing. Because Stanionis is not a fighter who can be just beat up like you saw him beat up on Saturday night. So as I've often quoted the great Floyd Mayweather, I make the fight look easy, but it's not because he's fighting an easy fighter. However, going into that matchup, so many people were doubting whether or not Boots had the talent and was worthy of the early praise and even worthy of a matchup with Terrence Crawford being a part of the conversation at all. Like, I seldom see boxing fans backpedal on their own analysis. They'll trash you and say, "Oh, you became garbage," or "You're soft now." But very seldom do they put it on themselves and be like, "Oh, maybe I misread this from the beginning." I was hearing people say that about Boots. I, as you know, am not one to loft a bunch of praise on a fighter early in his career. I do recognize talent. I do see prospects.
But I get that I move along further in boxing, longer in boxing, I understand why seasoned guys like you are like that. Go on.
And so with that said, I also recognize that boxing fans are so fickle, but when they put their name to a guy, they don't want to be wrong. It's like,
yeah,
they'd rather keep saying that this guy is the man in the face of evidence that they may not be correct in their analysis, rather than just say, "Oh, I was premature and giving this guy the blessing." I say all that to say that the people who were starting to short sell Boot stock are fully invested now. I see a 180 in all the commentary online, and rightly so. The question was in his own mind as to whether or not he was going to be the guy that he believed he is possible or he is capable of being. And I think on Saturday night, he proved, not just to us, man, he was in there proving something to himself. He may never admit that, because then that makes you admit doubt. But you don't know until you know. And I think he was like, whatever was the hindrance in his mind, if it was like, "Oh, I'm going to be more defensive, I got to be careful, I can't get caught, I don't want to take too many chances, maybe some of these things I haven't figured out yet that I thought would be easy in the pro game," He let all that go. I've never seen him, or I haven't seen many fighters, to be fair, quite as relaxed, quite as confident. And it takes effort, but yes, it looked effortless because
But
he
he's
was in
having
rhythm,
fun.
he was smooth, he was enjoying himself, and he was sure. That to me is what the takeaway is from Saturday night.
So you mentioned a lot of people selling their boot stock. I did it. I think I even joked, on one of our lives after the Jukajan rematch. I was like, "Hey, this and this and that wasn't right in this fight. This needs to be tightened up." But I'm not selling the boot stock, and so it feels good that at a time where a lot of my stocks aren't doing the best right now, that at least I got an uptick in my boot stock again. I got something back on there. I'm happy about that. No, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I want to hear what I most love, Sean, is your post-fight breakdown. I was looking on your channel. Forgive me if I miss it, but I know you did the round by round, so it's probably a little redundant to do it right after the fight again. But yeah, I'd like to hear your kind of breakdown of the fight as it progressed.
Yeah, well, I knew I was gonna click up with my man Raheem the next morning, so no need for me to do that after the fight, So
Fair
so
enough.
here, so thank you. No, well, quickly before I kind of get to the breakdown of the fight, I said on Twitter afterwards that he made good on his Mayweather-Gotti promise, and because he said this fight is gonna be like Mayweather-Gotti for me, and some people lost their minds. He's not Floyd Mayweather. He's not Floyd Mayweather, and I know Floyd got touched less in his fight against Arturo Gotti. I know Gotti is a Hall of Famer and Stanionis is not. I'm not saying Jaron Ennis is Floyd Mayweather. Not saying that. But what I'm saying is he's 33. He was 33-0 heading into this fight. So was Floyd Mayweather heading into the Arturo Gotti fight. He's 28 years old heading into the. Oh, he's 27. Floyd was 28. They both battered him for 6 rounds to where he couldn't come out for the seventh round coming out of the corner. It was almost 20 years ago. All right, is it not? Can we not give a wink and a nod to that fight at least? Like Ennis deserves to say he paid some homage to that performance, right?
That's
Um,
not
oh no, oh dang, Raheem froze for a minute.
oh,
Yeah, yeah,
that is a more than a coincidence. That is manifestation. That's what I mean by he was so sure. He had visualized that fight in his mind. He said to himself, "This is Mayweather Gotti." Whether he believes he's Mayweather or thinks Stanionis is Gotti, he knows that that's that moment. And he did exactly what he manifested in his mind to do. He was so sure he could execute it. I think that is part of the relaxation and the fun he was having. The fact that it was the same bell that Gotti couldn't answer, that Stanionis couldn't answer, beyond the age and the record, that part right there, that is not a coincidence. This man lived up to his dream in that moment. How many times do you think he watched that Mayweather Gotti fight as a young man, as a kid, even thinking about himself in that role? It's like a kid in his backyard on the basketball hoop. Jordan,
yeah,
Kobe,
yes, yes.
that's his moment. That was the fight that defined him in his mind or what he wanted to be. And he lived up to that moment on the night. So, yes, tip of the hat for sure.
Yeah, yeah. He went guru on us in '91, right? These are the words that I manifest. Yeah, and he did that. But
It's a
uh
deep cut, Sean. It's a deep
yes,
cut.
yeah, I love that song. He was jazzy in there last night and improvisational and
Right.
dynamic and creative. And that's what we
In the
call.
face of danger. It wasn't like Stanios wasn't coming back with heavy shots, wasn't able to hurt him if he had been able to pile up some of those shots on top of shots, which Jerome didn't let him do. But it's not like he wasn't in the fire. So that also has to be acknowledged because he got hit with some good stuff and he rode some shots that made those shots look bigger than they were. But we know Stanley was throwing everything he had behind those punches, and some of them landed. Like I said, Boots rolled with some of them, but he was in the danger zone to get off. He was punching with a
Taking
puncher,
chances.
taking
That's
chances.
why he's fun to watch.
Right,
And taking
right.
those chances makes him vulnerable a little bit. Makes other fighters believe he's that much more beatable despite all that talent.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and oh man, I was gonna say something, but you just forgive me on that one. I'll get back to it. But the performance itself was when you mention he rolls some of those shots, he doesn't tuck his chin, and so luckily for him, he's got a good Philadelphia chin on him. But even if you have a good chin and the right kind of guy catches you on the button because you're so exposed, it's not tucked, it's out there. That could be a problem. But anyways, it is what it is on that front. It's good luck getting to him, but in this fight, he made this fight easy because he used his jab and he showed maturity with the jab. Because I think some fighters today, we don't see the dominant jabs as often as we did in decades past. Maybe part of it is a lot of watching Floyd Mayweather and his pull right hand counter, for example. That just him being the counter puncher that they all looked up to. They're not thinking jab, they're thinking countering the jab, coming over the top of the jab, and they're almost looking at the jab as rudimentary. Like, that's what they did back in the day. If you try to double and triple it up too much these days, that pull right hand that everybody studied from Floyd and Hopkins, and that's, you can't do that like you did back in the day. But I think part of it is when you're not snapping the guy's head back, with that clean power jab, you're not getting that instant gratification. And so sometimes it makes you dispose of that weapon a little bit. And Boots didn't do that. Stanionis was throwing a lot fewer jabs, but he was throwing the shotgun jab. So every time his jab landed, he got that effect. He would knock Boots' head up. But Boots showed maturity in that, okay, I'm not always landing it. I'm not always knocking his head up with it, but let me double it up, triple it up, stab the body with it. And by just constantly using his jab, the most important punch in the book, he made the fight so much easier for himself. He didn't let Stanionis just walk in and straight line. Yeah, so.
That speed
Yeah.
is the difference. And Stanionis early in the fight realized this speed is going to be a problem. And like you said, Boots wouldn't just let him walk in, but Stanionis was happy, or at least willing, to accept the jab just if he could get in. And he was using his head as a battering ram. He abandoned early in the fight trying to jab with Boots, right? So he was like, okay, I'll take one to get in, and then I can come across the top and maybe land one of these big, big hooks. This is what I believe he resorted to early, which is why we didn't get a second half of the fight, because it didn't work. And to your point, the jab was the music of the night, but we can't forget the stab. It was the jab would not have worked as well if it weren't for the stab. And he kept bringing Stanionis down into a deeper crouch because he was stabbing him to the body. And then Stanionis was already willing to use his head to get in. So you're right back upstairs, keeping him out. And you could see on Stanionis' face he had betrayed his own astonishment at the success that Boots was having with the smile. Like, he had to laugh himself. Like, what the fuck is this? I saw the frustration, and he still believed himself, Stanionis did. I think the smile was because, yes, out of frustration, but it wasn't like he was giving up. He was just like, man, this sucks. You know what I mean? And I got to figure a way around this. And while he was still trying to work his way around it, he was getting broke down round by round. So, yes, this fight, as we talked about, is a moment in the career, and I believe the mental belief in oneself that Boots experienced, but I can pinpoint it even more minutely than the entirety of the fight and the significance of it. The fifth round. The only round that Boots lost on my card, actually,
right,
was the most important round of the entire fight. And maybe at this point, the most pivotal round of Boots' entire career. Because he lost that round and hurt his opponent doing it. That's why the sixth round was like too much. It wasn't that Stanionis was so hurt or that even he was definitely going to get knocked out in the next round. I'm not even sure that's true. But it's when he broke Stanionis' will. It's when Stanionis said, that's the best round I got in me. And I got hurt winning it. I don't know if I can do that 7 more times in a row. And even if I do, I don't know if I can take the punishment of winning the round 7 more times in a row. That's when he broke Stanionis. And that, to me, it was the most impressive round. Because to lose a round, but to hurt the other man more than you got hurt in it, and break his will in a round you lost, my friend, that is rare air.
Well, you're highlighting one of the best things about Jaron Ennis is that he punctuates conversations. He tends to have the last word. And that's why he takes those chances that make him vulnerable in spots that other fighters won't take. It's a little bit, there's a reason why Jaron Ennis and David Benavidez are two of my favorite fighters to watch. People will point out this technical flaw. This is, they cross their feet. Maybe Boots switches too much. Boots' chin is exposed. David stands too straight up, whatever. But they trust themselves with their creativity and their punch selection being so dynamic and their hand speed that you may hit them in that exchange. You're right, punch with them, but I'm going to have the last word. And I'm probably going to get the first and the last word. And that's what some of my favorite fighters do when they're executing at a high level. They are first and last. That's something the old trainers would always want from the best fighters. Be first and be last. And that's what Ennis does very well. He always trusts that he's going to get the better of the exchange. That's what made Terrence Crawford so great throughout his run from 35 to 47. You may touch him in spots, but he's gonna punctuate the exchange. He's gonna find the mark with the best shot at the end. He's gonna win the exchange, or even if you win an exchange or two, he's gonna invite you to the third, fourth, and fifth one. And they just believe in their dynamic ability. So, and the point I think I forgot earlier was you mentioned he had a legit guy in Stanionis in his face. Well, Stanionis is the antithesis to him. He's all fundamentals, really no special effects. He just executes the fundamentals. Chin tucked like you want, unlike Boots. High guard always here, not like Boots, dropping the hands a lot, sometimes relying on the reflexes. Elbows always in, everything compact and turned over crisp. And he undressed that. He couldn't do that if he was just a bag of tricks, if he was just a bunch of special effects. That shows that there's stake to that sizzle, there's substance there. You know, how much, well, and to that point, I wrote down a few names because I just always like making this NBA analogy for Jaron Ennis. I don't know why. So I think that what he reminds me of is a really, really good all-star who's maybe not the MVP, maybe not the best player in the league. You got Kobe Bryant, Tim Duncan, LeBron James, but behind them, you got some really talented guys. Some of them became Hall of Famers in their own right. Vince Carter, Tracy McGrady, Sean Kemp. And these guys can dazzle you on the highlight reel, sometimes better than those guys. And there's a plenty of substance there too. They were great players. They weren't just, all flash. So I think like on the low end of his floor, he's a Steve Francis, Ja Morant would be one today. Really low ceiling. He's already better than these guys, but J.R. Smith, Lance Stevenson. But I think his ceiling as a fighter would be the equivalent of being a Vince Carter, a Tracy McGrady, a Sean Kemp, a Blake Griffin. So I don't know if all that, like some people more fondly remember those guys than a Tim Duncan. I would call, we'll see. We'll see if all that flash, which certainly is already proven to have substance, will have substance at the highest of the high levels, the pound for pound levels.
Well, I won't pretend to know my history well enough to contrast your theory, but it is an interesting one. Those names mean something to me, and I do conjure certain highlights when I hear them called out.
They had the sauce.
Yeah, interesting. If I'm going to continue with this NBA analogy without having really a grasp of every player's dynamic, I would say that Boots would be my star role player at this point. I'm not sure I would put the whole team on his back.
He's Austin
Reeves.
Understand
what I mean? You know what I mean? Like I'm thinking Harper. I mean no disrespect if you feel like that's too small a name.
Yeah, at least be Rodman.
What?
Yeah, at least be Rodman.
Okay, but here's why I say Harper. And again, forgive me if it feels like a diss, because it's not. What I remember about Harper, let me put it that way, because I can't even break down the totality of Harper's play. But
I threw you
the highlights that I have in my mind of Harper is excellent. Like when it was needed, when that moment to step up, and you dish it to him. And like the reason I say that is because of all the doubt that was creeping up pre-fight. And you're like, is that the guy who should have the ball right now? And because he knows in that moment he's the man for that shot, it's sinking. It's sinking. And that is what he did on Saturday night. He sunk that shot all net. It wasn't a difficult fight, and it was supposed to be. It was supposed to be at least a tough fight. It's not like I had a bunch of people calling it for Stanionis or like Boots was an underdog. I don't think that was the case. But this fight was definitely supposed to be tougher than what it was. And his prediction that it was the Mayweather-Gotti coming right down to the round, I think just lets you know that he definitely is on a mission. And if his role on a so-called team is not for me, the Jordan just yet, now he couldn't evolve into that. It is that in those moments, he's going to look like a Jordan because he's landing the buzzer beater. Whereas in, like you say, like the fight before that, he maybe isn't looking that good while he's still getting the win. That's the role player fights. And then when the moment is needed, when there has to be a determining factor, when there has to be a defining moment, it's all net. That's what I mean.
Yeah. I still think he could potentially be that guy. But I'm just saying right now, like the guy I saw last night was a really fun all-star with like a great talent who's definitely really good. But I don't know. If you were to fight the Terrence Crawfords and the Virgil Ortiz, you might need to tighten it up a little bit compared to
And
what
those
I.
are those are those moments. So Sean, for me, and I hate having to go further down this road because you're so much more educated on than I am, but what I'm saying is I would need to see him fighting like he fought last night, no matter who the opponent is, whether he's up for it or not, whether it is a defining moment fight or if it's just a stay busy fight. That's the Jordan, that's the Kobe, that's like
It could be
every
the
night.
Grizzlies on a
Yeah,
Tuesday. Jordan's giving you 40. Like
that's what I'm talking
he
about.
got yeah, exactly. Yeah, you know what? I love that metaphor because to liken myself to Jaron Ennis, right? It's like my Crawford fight would be like ESPN. Like, hey, we got an opening now. Would you like the job? Because that's how people land dream jobs, right? Like you just get called and sitting on your ass, and yeah, you don't go out there and get it. But no, I'm like, I think people. I don't know if you could do that job. Your hair is long, and you got certain things you need to mature and tighten up. And it's like, well, give me that fucking fight. Give me that opportunity. I guarantee you the hair will get cleaned up a little bit and certain things. And I think that's Jaron Ennis a little bit. Like, hey, give me the
Sean
Terrence Crawford,
doesn't
but
dress for the
you have
job
to.
he wants. He gets the job he wants so he can get dressed.
Yes, yeah, right. And it's like it don't work that way. You got to start tucking your chin now. You got to start doing. Yeah, you got to do it now. It doesn't work like.
But you're the Rodman. You're the Rodman. You know what? We're gonna keep trying to put you in
Yeah,
that box. You're the Allen Iverson. It's like you got to wear the suit. But you know what? Just practice.
man, I'll
We're
give
talking
you
about
50.
practice.
We talking about haircuts.
Yeah,
Haircuts.
we
Not
got
not
at
not
some
not the
point.
sport that I go out there and I give my everything and I dedicated my life to. Not the sport. We talking about haircuts. Yeah.
About
Thank you.
practice.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes. So we're gonna come to a place where we just accept that this is Sean and he's getting the rebounds and making the baskets. Don't ask him to change.